traffic is pretty heavy now. Perhaps I should give you an escort. Make sure you don't get lost again.
Sounds like a good idea.
If we make good time, perhaps we can share a beer at the airport.
Love to.
We've missed our flight. The next one is in 22 hours.
And I guess we'll share a lot of beer.
It's a movie about sex trafficking, but with a lot of laughs and a doofus main character. We are still up all night, and this episode we watched Kickboxer 3.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to USA Up All Night with me, Rhonda.
Hi, I'm Gilbertgottfried, the comedian in the cupboard, for USA Up All Night.
In this movie, you'll see two of your favorite stars. Now, if you drink enough beer, you'll start seeing more of your favorite stars.
Stay with me on USA Up All Night.
Welcome to Still Up All Night. You know what we do by now. We celebrate the awesomely bad and sometimes surprisingly good films of USA Up All Night. I'm Travis Yates, joined by my dojo partner and co-host, Rob Cady. Rob, how you doing?
Well, yourself?
I'm fantastic. If you listened to our last episode, which I hope you did, on Chopper Chicks in Zombie Town, we got pretty deep in a discussion of feminism and implicit messaging in B movies. So, Rob, we discussed this and we intentionally looked for something a bit lighter, and you can never go wrong with a good martial arts movie, right?
Yeah. Not so sure that holds true, my friend.
Unfortunately, though, that's kind of what we thought going into the movie. And another reason is my son just started karate. And I'm sure as many of our listeners have memories of when they were kids in the 80s, as karate was sweeping the nation thanks to Hollywood. Of course, Bruce Lee films of the 70s and then later the Karate Kid franchise in the 80s. But I know for me, Rob, it was the B movies that got me into martial arts as a kid. I mean, American Ninja, The Last Dragon are two that stand out to me. Rob, a couple of questions as we delve into young Rob's life here. As a kid, were you into martial arts, into karate, as it was just essentially known then? And what early karate films were influential for you?
100% was took lessons for a number of years. My father ended up achieving his black belt. Sort of part of our weekend ritual, my dad and I, we sat down and watched the awfully dubbed Kung Fu movies. And I probably couldn't name a single one that we watched, but we watched them whenever they were on. And my dad was a huge Bruce Lee fan, so if ever there was a Bruce Lee movie on, it was getting watched by us. It made up a huge part of my childhood. Even so much so at one point I got a full, ninja outfit and stalked the neighborhood as a ninja. So yeah, went through all those paces. Huge fan of martial arts films, even to this day, if they're, done well.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit later about maybe the judiciousness that we have as we watch our martial arts films today versus back then. But yeah, same thing. If there was a karate movie, a ninja movie, a martial arts movie on, however you want to define the genre, I wasn't turning away. Rob, I even still have the first throwing star that I ever got.
Heck yeah.
I bought it at the Peoria, Illinois Civic Center at some sort of festival that they were having there. Lots of karate booths, of course. And despite many moves and lost treasures, my Chinese star has made it with me through all the moves because, you never leave home without the throwing star.
Absolutely.
And I don't know how many apartment deposits my mom lost because of the holes that I put in our walls throwing that thing in the house. So, Mom, if you're listening, I'm so sorry. And please know that at least I still kept the weapon of destruction.
Yeah, I secretly assembled a small collection of ninja-related weaponry that was definitely not supposed to have. And if my mom had ever discovered it, I would have lost it. And Don't remember over the years, but again, same thing, multiple moves. It was, they all got lost in the shuffle, and probably I had to, chuck them before getting caught is my guess.
Throw the throwing stars.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Well, speaking of weapons of destruction, Rob, we've got the third in a long line of 8 movies.
8?
It's Kickboxer 3, The Art of War. Of course, a play on words on the infamous book by Sun Tzu. I call it a weapon of destruction because it was the first of the Kickboxer films to get the dreaded direct-to-video release. Though in our world, that makes it podcast gold. Initial thoughts as we decided on Kickboxer 3 as this episode's film.
We've made a huge mistake. But you just blew me away with 8. I thought they stopped at 5, and here now I see that, just a few short years ago they brought it back.
Yeah, let's dig into the genesis of the Kickboxer franchise, shall we? Rob, we actually have Cannon Films and Chuck Norris to thank for the entire Kickboxer franchise. So the original Kickboxer movie, made in 1989, of course starred Jean-Claude Van Damme. Van Damme moved to, or Van Damme, I'm not sure on the actual pronunciation. I've heard it done. What is the JCVD pronunciation? Do you know?
I just go with JCVD. It's been so long since I've actually heard him say it that I don't know.
And then the wrestler Rob Van Dam came along.
Yeah.
And that
co-opted it.
Yeah, right. So anyway, JCVD, how about that? Moved to the United States in 1982 with the hopes of becoming a Hollywood actor, and one of his first jobs. Any guesses, Rob?
Was it Predator, right?
Close. Earlier and cheesier, it was an extra as a dancer in Cannon's Breakin' film.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
Yep. Really. In the demonstration to save
Wait, hold on. As a dancer?
As a dancer.
Because, we've seen him dance in a couple of his movies, and it's not good.
Well, that's why he was in the background of Breakin' and not in the foreground. But yes, he is seen in the big demonstration scene in Breakin' in the background as one of the break dancer dancing to save the community center. So there you go. That was his big connection to Cannon, and now not a surprise with that Cannon connection. JCVD befriended Chuck Norris, and the two would actually become sparring partners. And Van Damme did stunt work in the Norris film Missing in Action. And then he would also do some work in Predator that got cut.
Yeah. I'm familiar with that stuff, yeah.
Yeah. Cannon eventually realized that they had a big star on their hands, and his breakout role came in 1988's Bloodsport. So the following year, Kickboxer was a natural fit, and 7 films somehow would follow. So we have Cannon and Chuck Norris in a roundabout, or should I say a roundhouse sort of way, you like that, to thank for today's film, or yell at for today's film. But yeah, that's that. Cannon and Chuck Norris initially launched the star power of a budding superstar, JCVD.
That's dropping the knowledge today. I didn't know all that backstory.
And then the progression of this franchise is quite comical. The films revolve around the Sloan family, and Van Damme, who played Kurt Sloan in the first film, declined coming back for Kickboxer 2 because he was filming Double Impact. Because, 2 of JCVDs are better than 1. And so they kill him off in the second film and bring in actor Sasha Mitchell to play Kurt's younger brother, David, who was not in the first one, to avenge his death. And Kickboxers 2 through 4 would revolve around David Sloan. And then Kickboxer 5, Redemption, it's all about Matt Reeves, who is, quote, a family friend of the Sloans. And I just can't help but laugh in thinking about the dinner table at a Sloan holiday gathering and how the Kickboxer movies matched the order of seating at the dinner table. Like you've got Big Brother Kurt at the head of the table, little brother David a few seats down, and then the latchkey kid down the street, the family friend Matt Reeves way down at the end of the table. Or it's kind of like when the Von Erichs started tragically dying and had to bring in Lance Von Erich, the supposed but not really cousin of the boys.
Yep.
Matt Reeves in Kickboxer 5 would be the equivalent of Lance Von Erich. So then, as you referenced, after an 11-year hiatus, it was decided that the world was ready for more Kickboxer. So in 2016, Kickboxer 6 Vengeance was made as a meta reimagining of the original film, with Van Damme returning as Master Durand and Alan Moosey as Kurt Sloan, and then Dave Bautista as the original villain, Tong Po.
And here's the embarrassing part. I just realized I've seen that movie.
Yeah, that is embarrassing.
I honestly didn't know it was
the connection
connected
Wow.
to, I just thought it was a new movie named Kickboxer Vengeance, not an actual continuation of the original story. And I don't know that Dave Bautista is even named in it.
And even though he's taking on the role of the original Kickboxer villain.
Yeah. So a number of years ago, I watched that. It's not very good. Certainly better than what we watched last night. But there you go.
Well, and Rob, Kickboxer 6 was made for $10 million. Do you know what the gross was?
Wait, got a theatrical release?
I don't know. I think it was just counting.
I'll say $6 million.
According to IMDb, Kickboxer 6 Vengeance, which was made for $10 million, grossed a little under $288,000 worldwide.
Oh, gosh.
That's what we call a loss in the film industry, friends. And
how do you make two more?
Yeah, despite that, another Kickboxer was made in 2018 with a bunch of UFC guys. And then there is one slated for production. So that would be then a...
it looks like the 2018 one also has the Mountain from Game of Thrones in it too.
Okay.
And Mike Tyson. So
okay.
There you go.
But that's not what we're talking about. Today we're talking specifically about Kickboxer 3. So, Rob, all jokes aside about the later Kickboxer films, it does make sense that in 1992 they went back to the well with Kickboxer 3. Mm-hmm. The sequel grossed almost $500,000 on its opening weekend, and it grossed more than $1.25 million with video sales. So clearly a money grab for Kickboxer 3 with a handsome lead and some no-name actors. Kickboxer 3 debuted on USA Up All Night on June 7th, 1996. So definitely a late arrival to the party. And it would air a total of 4 times, with the last airing on January 17th, 1998. And we talked a little bit about this before the show. In searching, we wanted to find an actual ninja movie, and we couldn't. And Kickboxer 3 or 4 were the only options really that we had as far as the Kickboxer franchise goes. And then there were a number of other films, but this was the one ultimately decided upon. And it was interesting, the lack of ninja movies, because I thought, given the gratuitous violence, the beheadings, the death by throwing stars, that that'd be kind of a natural fit for Up All Night. What would you think?
That was exactly what I expected. I am hard pressed now in my memory to figure out how I watched all those ninja movies if it wasn't on Up All Night. Like, what was I watching them on? But yeah, I mean, there are plenty of kung fu movies, and then we found Kickboxer and we found Van Damme's Lionheart in terms of just sort of more universal martial art films as opposed to strictly the foreign dubbed kung fu flicks. But yeah, not a single ninja movie. A couple with ninja in the title, but they were again kung fu based. So,
well, Rob, the rise of movies like this with Jean-Claude Van Damme, the Kickboxer franchise, that kind of moved the genre away from your traditional ninja movie. Those kind of coincided with the rise of Up All Night. So I'm just wondering if the producers of the show thought that a good old-fashioned ninja movie was too outdated, maybe even for the young male audiences that it had on its hands. I don't know.
That is a surprising decision to come to if that's the case. But yeah, that sounds plausible.
Yeah. So the film was directed by Rick King, not a Hollywood name by any stretch of the means. As a director, King has 12 feature films to his name. For me, most notably, just before making Kickboxer 3, Rob, I don't know how much research you did on King. Any guesses to what film that was for King just before this movie?
I don't remember. I know when I looked, I don't think I was familiar with any of his other films.
I'm sure you had to be familiar with one, 1990's Prayer of the Roller Boys, starring Corey Haim, the post-apocalyptic...
I don't think I ever saw that.
Oh my goodness! All right, well, side assignment for the co-host.
Yeah,
you must watch Prayer of the Roller Boys. What I found most fascinating about King is his credit as writer and co-producer on 1991's Point Break.
Yeah, I saw that, and sort of, I think I saw that first, so thought, oh, here's a guy that had like a much bigger career after this film, and then when I clicked, I was like, well, I don't know any of these movies that he directed. What happened?
Yeah, it's crazy to think and to realize, really, that the director of Kickboxer 3 was the person who came up with the story for Point Break, literally while sitting on a beach in Malibu, just having learned how to surf himself and reading an article about a bank robbery, and that's how the idea for surfing bank robbers came to be.
Wow, you did a deep dive on that one. Nice.
Yeah, yeah. The story with King, he's a family man. He didn't ever want to turn down a good payday, and so that's how he ends up directing, Prayer of the Roller Boys and Kickboxer 3. But some pretty impressive behind the scenes credits to his name. So pretty cool. So Kickboxer 3 was released on October 23rd, 1992 by Kings Road Entertainment. Cannon was only involved with the original Kickboxer, and Trimark Pictures produced the sequel. So here we are now in our third iteration of the film with a straight-to-video production team.
Yeah.
As mentioned earlier, the movie stars Sasha Mitchell as David Sloan, the little brother of original protagonist Kurt Sloan. David Sloan, the lackadaisical world kickboxing champion, is the best way to describe him. He's a doofus, and
well, it's such an odd choice too when you look at. I mean, I never watched Step by Step, but had in channel surfing encountered it and saw him on that where he apparently plays himself.
Yes,
because that. There are definite moments in Kickboxer 3 where that character is identical to the step-by-step character of this, as you said, doofus. And it just seems like how did he get here in terms of in Kickboxer 2, 3, and 4, I believe, from, at the time, I think he was doing step-by-step the whole time while these movies were happening.
I'm assuming his looks and his background in martial arts, and that's it. Because you're exactly right. I mean, he was best known at the time for his 2-year stint on the TV show Dallas as J.R. Ewing's illegitimate son, and then, as you referenced, as Cody from the sitcom Step by Step. And just he couldn't be any further opposed from his original older brother Kurt Sloan in the original Kickboxer, and that takes the films in just such a different direction. And apparently, despite his affable characters on TV, Mitchell is known as being really difficult to work with on movie sets. So he thinks he's a bit too big for his karate britches, I'd say.
And like the stories I read said he was often, really aggressive and would threaten violence against other people involved in the production. And the director indicated that he did this because he thought everyone thought he was stupid. And the director threw in, which he is. So I enjoyed that little nugget.
Yeah, when I did the deep dive into Rick King, I also found some quotes about comparing working with Corey Haim compared to Sasha Mitchell, and obviously Corey Haim's, all of his problems are well documented. And he said working with Corey Haim was essentially a dream compared to working with Sasha Mitchell.
Wow.
So there you go. So an odd choice, and an odd choice to stick with for three of these films where he wasn't essentially carrying the franchise by any stretch of the means at that point, because now it was direct to video. It wasn't like it was still in theaters.
Yeah.
So Dennis Chan stars as Zian, the Mr. Miyagi type trainer for David Sloan, and the only character that officially ties this film to the original Kickboxer. Mm-hmm. And though not well known in the U.S., Chan is an accomplished actor, producer, and director in the Hong Kong film market. Any memories of him in any other films, Rob?
I think my introduction to him was the Kickboxer franchise, and don't remember anything else coming. Nothing jumps to mind that I've seen him in, and I was sort of saddened by his role in this film. Mm-hmm. It felt like they markedly changed his character, and he sort of became more of a comedic relief. And I don't know, just tonally, there was a shift in this film relative to 1 and 2 that I didn't appreciate, mm-hmm. Among other things. But I have no recollections. I'm sure I've seen him in other things, but nothing jumps to mind.
We'll talk a little bit later when we break down the plot about his character. I definitely agree with you there. So finally, we have Richard Komar as the antagonist, Frank Lane. Komar is Canadian-born, and according to the Canadian movie database, which is a thing, it's called Northern Stars.
Didn't know that. Yeah. Nice.
Komar comes from a long line of actors, and on his mother's side, there has been an actor in the family since the days of Shakespeare. So, fun fact there. And Komar is definitely a classic, that guy who was in that thing. Mm-hmm. But Rob, I couldn't place him in any other movies. Any recollections of our inept antagonist here with Richard Komar?
Same thing. I knew the name, but I was like, man, and I couldn't think of anything else I'd seen him in. So certainly didn't leave all that much of an impression on me. But when you look at his IMDb page, there's a huge list of stuff you would have seen him in. I just don't remember him in any of those things.
And perfect casting. I will say this about almost all of our Up All Night movies. Maybe not necessarily for the protagonist, but the antagonists are almost so perfectly cast.
Yeah. I'll definitely agree with that.
I do think this. I know that, like, in the world of professional wrestling, I know that wrestlers always say it's so much more fun and easy to play a heel, mm-hmm. which is the term for a bad guy, because you just get to really put your chops into it and play sometimes these over the top characters. And I think that's what's happening with these movies, which are already silly to begin with, and then you get some of these actors who have been just smaller character actors throughout their careers, and then they just throw everything that they've got at these ridiculous roles, and it really always works.
all bets are off type scenario. I get to be the bad guy. Let's have at it.
Let's go to town. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about Kickboxer 3, shall we? The narrative here. In the opening scene, we actually first start meeting our villain of the film, as we just referenced, evil American Frank Lane, played by Komar, who basically runs a brothel. He kidnaps young Brazilian girls and then uses them as sex slaves for guests that come to his resort, I guess it is. It's never really fully explained what it is that he runs, but at some point he's got a little restaurant or a bar. So a very serious tone to begin this movie, which then is completely juxtaposed when we next meet our protagonist, the world kickboxing champion David Sloan, and his trainer Zian, as they're flying to Rio de Janeiro, and David is competing in a championship bout, and it's just this stupid comedic scene. David is wearing such an early 90s outfit. He's got these like loud red overalls with no shirt on underneath. You know, he's got this Joey Lawrence doofus charm that they think it's anything but charming to me.
Yes.
I wanted to punch him in the face the first time he appeared on screen. What did you think when we're first introduced to him?
You know, I would have thought he was trying to do like an impression of Keanu Reeves from Bill and Ted, but then having seen him in Step by Step, it's like, no, that's him. That's just that dude. He is, this doofus. Or he, thinks that's, what everyone expects out of him. So that's how he act. I go with he's a doofus. So.
And now, granted, as we just mentioned, sex trafficking was introduced as the main conflict. For the film,
where I thought, here you queue up a movie called Kickboxer 3, and I'm expecting, okay, here comes kickboxing, and we immediately go to sex trafficking, and I was already a little like, well, what is this movie?
Yeah, of all the crimes that they could use in this film, which was clearly going for a more lighthearted tone than its predecessors, but yet went all in on just one of the most evil crimes you could possibly imagine. So an interesting narrative choice there. All right, so they arrive in Rio and they're having lunch in an outdoor restaurant when they encounter some poor street hustlers that turn out to be a brother and sister, Marcos and Isabella. And after the kids try and fail to steal David and Zian's camera, and after Marcos had pulled a knife on David, which we'll come back to that, they're taken in by the American duo. So David and Zian learn that Marcos and Isabella's mom is dead and their dad is in prison for stealing food to feed them. And it's almost like for the rest of the movie, this is the foursome that we almost always see on screen.
Yes.
Which is just an interesting, like, we get it.
Choice
you made a connection to these young kids. We get it. But then it's like, you could cue up some fun, lighthearted music as they're toiling around Rio, and seeing the sights and stuff is ridiculous. Okay, so the next day, David is set to perform in an exhibition at a charity kickboxing event, because those are a thing, apparently, down there. And we meet Sloane's competition in the upcoming bout, Martine, played by Ian Jacklin. So, Rob, Jacklin to me was a cross between Peter Dinklage and Patrick Swayze, and maybe a bit of Arnold Schwarzenegger in there too, with some Ivan Drago as well. I mean,
well, yeah, we definitely. I mean, just the way the whole scene plays out, it's all, Ivan Drago and Rocky IV. The exhibition match taken far too seriously and.
Right. I mean, he punishes his weaker opponent just like Drago did to Apollo. Yeah. And I'm surprised they didn't go all the way. I was actually a little disappointed here for building more conflict and have him kill off this poor fighter because, oh, by the way, David was asked to be in his corner for the exhibition match. So,
well, it's totally where you would expect this movie to go, like set up the a larger conflict for the upcoming, championship match with he and Martine. So he would, kill a guy in the exhibition match, and then we'd have to, recognize him as this significant threat. And now we move to training montages and, David preparing for the bout. But no, none of that happens, and we go a totally different direction entirely.
Yeah, is this the Last Jedi? Are we trying to subvert? Oh boy, we get sidetracked on this argument every now and again, so we'll avoid that. Okay, so David and Zian brought Marcos and Isabella to the charity event where Frank Lane sees Isabella, and of course later that night have his men kidnap her. It's funny too, because when Isabella first meets Lane, and then anytime they're on screen up until the point that he's kidnapped, she is like always looking at him with these like kind of leery eyes. Like she's the only one of all of the adults around that picks up on this creepy vibe that Lane is
well, just the fact that he keeps oogling her, right, every time he sees her.
Nobody else
witnesses this, and it got, like, some of that stuff with her got uncomfortable to me.
Yeah.
Like she was, I think, 15 at filming, 15 or 16. And just, to, having her in that position and to get kidnapped and be put into sex trafficking, and the scene where they go shopping to make the Marcus and Isabella presentable for the party. And they buy her this dress that I thought was like way over the top for her age, and at that point, like, I mean, we knew where the movie was going because Lane, kept eyeballing her so much, but it just, it got a little uncomfortable for me.
Yeah, well, even more uncomfortable for me when then after he kidnaps her, and the plan is to sell her, and he has a doctor examine her, and the doctor comes in and says she's a virgin.
She's a virgin.
And I'm like, okay, what is this? Is all the while we know that Doofus David is running around on the other side of the narrative here, and it's like, this is terrible. So yeah, like you said, this now we know where the whole film is going. This sends David and Zian on a mission to find Isabella, and to do so, they have to work their way through a number of crooked characters in Rio, leading them to Bronco, the man you want who has all the best girls, as he's described.
Yeah.
And David and Zian infiltrate Bronco's compound, where just a hilarious, over-the-top shootout occurs. For a movie that's literally called Kickboxer, there's a lot of gunplay in this movie.
There's so little martial arts that I was like, what am I watching? They have that brief moment, to help establish that we're here in Brazil, where they're, at the beach, and the little scene where the different people are doing capoeira, and they sort of explain the origins of that martial art, and I'm thinking, oh, that'll come back in later, and because again, I think I'm watching a martial arts movie, and now we're running around the house shooting at each other.
Yeah, they take out I think like 8 bad guys. They were counting comically at one point.
Well, because the one police officer tipped them off to, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. There are 7 guards in the house to help them out, and not implicate himself.
At one point, one of them hilariously jumps out of an armoire.
Yes.
To, of course, only get kicked and shot. So they finally confront Bronco, whose wife sells out Frank Lane as Bronco's partner. But then, of course, they warn Lane ahead of time that the pair are coming for him. So, Rob, I want to talk for a minute about David's outfits in this movie. I guess it's no fault of his, but there's a complete lack of style in this film. For most of the film, all of the film, really. He just walks around in jogging pants and a cutoff T-shirt. Mm-hmm. At one point, his pants are like bright green. His shirt is purple, and he's wearing a pair of LA Gear pumps. Pumps, Rob.
I didn't pick up on
Do you
that.
remember those? The little air pumps in the tongue?
Yeah, absolutely.
I get that David is an athlete, but I mean, these costume design choices make him look like a 5-year-old dressing himself, which just adds to this childlike buffoon character that they've created instead of giving him, I don't know, an adult attire.
Outfit, yeah. Well, it wouldn't surprise me at all if this was a case of him choosing his
Yes.
own, wardrobe, like in one of his fits or tirades, he was known for on sets. So he demanded, I'm gonna, wear these pants because they're comfortable.
But this is what I wear.
I have to kick.
Oh, that is funny and probably true. And probably they didn't give much pushback at this point if he's threatening violence on the set. Okay, so back to this narrative. When David and Zian show up at Lane's, Lane and his cronies are of course waiting for them, and they have Isabella as a captive. So they're kind of they're hamstrung. They can't do anything here while they have Isabella at gunpoint. So David asks Lane what he wants, and Lane tells him all he wants David to do is show up to the fight with Martine. But he tells him that he needs some extra training first. And he does things like make David run around the compound at gunpoint wearing a backpack full of rocks. Takes him miles out to sea to swim back in. The point was to wear David down before his fight with Martine. And then, of course, Lane has a big money bet on the fight. Rob, this was such an odd sequence. I mean, he literally was only giving him training before a big fight.
Yeah.
I mean...
Well, and we had to know, and thankfully they didn't subvert the genre. Be it like we knew a montage of training was coming at some point, and we get it. We just get it in sort of the most ridiculous way possible, and that also brings in his trainers. Somewhere early in the film, he makes the one comment about God. What is the quote? I can't even find it in my notes about the mind doesn't always travel with the body or something along those lines. And, again, we think that is going to be sort of a something that carries through the film where, and it does happen in the training where he has to sort of separate his mind and his body in order to finish digging this giant hole in the ground.
But when he does that, it's a cutaway to him shirtless under a waterfall.
Yeah.
It was so funny. It was like such a gratuitous placement for the ladies, the one lady maybe watching this film.
Yeah.
And I was like, that had to be another choice demanded by Sasha Mitchell.
But again, you think that is going to come back in the final bout, that he's going to struggle and have to separate his mind and body because of the punishment he's getting. But no, it helps him, excuse me, get through the training, and then, that's it. That served its purpose. Moving on.
Well, and that's a good segue into what we had discussed earlier with the Zian character, and it's just this terrible, overplayed, especially in the 80s and here in the early 90s, this Asian cinematic trope where any Asian character is seen as this mysterious and mystical, powerful character. In this, he gives him this advice that then sends him off to this Zen-like place. Once they're allowed to go back to their hotel for the fight, Zian creates this mystical drink for David made with jungle leaves, snake venom, ripe caterpillars, and chicken eyes, I believed they asked for.
Well, there were mouse tails too.
Oh, God. Okay. Now, so just ridiculous. I mean,
Well, again, it completely removed the impact and effect of the entire, your mind doesn't always travel with your body. Because now we've whipped up this super concoction that will reinvigorate David after that intense training session. Like you're chopping your own legs out from underneath you throughout the film. And back to Zian, like they do that weird thing, as you said, where they tropify him with this, mysticism, but he's also a comedic moment, several times throughout the film. But then he's also kind of the moral center, like when the one scene where they're trying to find Isabella and he goes to this other brothel, and just that whole interaction with the madam at that brothel, and clearly establishing him as having strong character and morals. He was all over the place and so different from the previous movies. I was really thrown by him in this film.
And his name was only mentioned once in the entire film, and that was in the very early scenes when they first arrived in Rio, which really bothered me as well.
Really?
Yep. Yeah.
Huh.
So there you go.
Yeah.
So in another strange scene, someone unknown to us, I didn't go back to the beginning to see if this person was in the early scenes, but Lane calls him Senor Vargas. He shows up to his compound, to Lane's compound, saying that he wants to bet all that Lane can. Because
this guy came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that. Yeah, I was like, wait, who?
Yeah, because he wants Lane's compound, his whatever, resort, whatever he's running. And Senor Vargas references the coffee exchange, so I assume that he's like a big shot coffee farmer in Brazil. I don't.
Is that a thing in Brazil?
Right,
I didn't know. It is in a lot of South America, but I don't know if it's a huge export of Brazil.
Right, and they don't even reference, Rob, what they're betting on. So the fight, I assume, but they don't talk about terms. They don't reference the fight. So as an audience, I mean, we are just completely. This had to be a throw-in after the fact scene to up the ante, because at one point Lane makes a 3-to-1 odds bet with betting $10,000, which for the evil villain of the film, $10,000 shouldn't be that big of a bet.
Well, especially earlier in the film when he first propositions David, telling him there's a lot of money to be made in Brazil, and basically insinuates all you have to do is maybe throw a fight and $500,000 could come your way. And now he's betting 10 grand
right.
with 3-to-1 odds. Like, that math doesn't work.
And also, when they had Isabella at gunpoint, they had all the agency. And again, it doesn't ask David to throw the fight. Just asks him to show up. Just do what you were going to do anyway. Like, that didn't make any sense. And then I'm just going to have you do a few training tasks that hopefully wears you down a bit. Oh, my gosh. Okay, finally, Rob, we get to the big fight between Martine and David that nobody cares about because there's just no conflict built up between these two. Rob, I love the music played during this final fight. It reminded me of something that would be playing in like an 8-bit Nintendo game when you're fighting the big boss at the end of a level. Like,
oh yeah, now that you say that, that's exactly what it evokes.
Every big hit is met with a da-da, super cheesy, like quick hit. I mean, Isabella's life is supposed to be on the line here. None of the production is matching the stakes of the narrative here
at all. Yeah.
Earlier when Lane was making David run around with the backpack full of rocks, and you referenced, that it was a training montage. It was supposed to be these, tasks that were grinding him down to the point that he would barely be able to fight, not build him up. But yet we got training montage music along with those scenes. So I'm like, wait, this is actually inspiring to watch. Not so yet. A real disconnect between the music and the action on the screen.
Well, and I have to say the what we've been building towards his championship fight, man, the choreography is bad. Like, so much so, I was shocked because he has a martial arts background.
Both of them did. Both did. Ian Jacklin, the character playing Martine, does too.
It seemed very slow and deliberate, and it just I was like, what happened between, not that 2 was a good movie, but it was so much better than this. in every aspect, But I mean, we're here for martial arts and fight choreography, and it's just bad.
I want a spin-off here. I want Kickboxer 9 to be more about Martine, because I want to know more about this character. He was so ridiculous in his performance, and I love that in one sequence of moves where he bests David, he started doing the running man in the middle of the ring. Did you catch that?
Yeah, he should have been a bigger part of this movie. Like his goofiness in the ring and his charisma, he deserved a bigger part in this. And it's sad that we didn't get that.
And it's funny because you have just these two absolute goofballs that we're building towards the big fight between them, and these guys couldn't be more goofy. And then like a good old-fashioned early 90s WWF wrestling match, Rob, we get a ref bump in the match. And the ref is accidentally knocked out, and Lane prevents the timekeeper from ringing the bell to stop the fight, so the fight then moves to the outside of the ring.
Yeah, and chaos erupts.
Yeah, and then David just promptly disposes of Martine in I thought, a very kind of anticlimactic fashion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not a lot of rules there in Rio de Janeiro, despite
despite a championship on the line,
a world championship. Where are all the officials that are sanctioning the World Kickboxing Championship bouts? Okay, so in the meantime, Lane and his goon grab Isabella, and they're on the run, and Zian goes running after them, gets Isabella, and Lane escapes. And when Isabella tells David and Zian about the girls at Lane's compound, which they're finally just, learning about, they immediately go there, and they comically jog into the room, and they seem to do that a lot in this movie, where they kind of jog into
it's like the old action, and they just jog into the view of the camera.
I'm wondering again if Sasha Mitchell had shouldn't I be running in this scene? Shouldn't it be like I'm in my jogging pants? Let me show everyone how athletic I am. Yes. Okay, so they jog into the room, and they demand that the girls be set free. And Lane finally gets his comeuppance when David beats him up. And when Lane grabs a gun, we think he's defeated, but no, he grabs a gun. And then young Marcos appears out of nowhere with the knife from the beginning of the movie. And that's our happy ending. A 10-year-old just stabbed and killed someone.
Yeah, commits murder.
And then we're just played off with some upbeat island music as the inept cops joke about drinking a lot of beer with David and Zian at the airport.
That scene was just so awkward. He stabs him, is clearly mortified by what he's done, looking at the blood all over his hands, and then it's just kind of David makes some sort of passing statement.
Yeah. It's never as good as it feels, or
about the lifelong effect this will have on Marcos.
Right.
And then we just time for jokes.
Play us off. There we go. A very predictable yet also unsettling end to Kickboxer 3.
Yeah.
Okay, so Rob, as we mentioned earlier, Kickboxer 3 didn't get a theatrical release, so there's not much as far as formal reviews of this film. So as expected, there's no official tomato meter score from critics on Rotten Tomatoes, but it's time to find out what others are saying about this film, and it's time for your favorite part of each episode, Rob. What do you think the audience score is for Kickboxer 3 on Rotten Tomatoes from 1 to 100%?
I hope it's 20%.
So shockingly, there are more than 2,500 audience reviews.
Good Lord.
On the movie, on Rotten Tomatoes. So that first surprised me.
Yeah.
And the approval rating is, you're pretty close, 25%. which I got to be honest, I'm surprised it's that high.
Still too high. Yeah.
So let's hear some of these 2,500 reviews, which we painstakingly went through every one, I'm sure. But let's pluck a few of the best here. Alan C. gives it 2 stars and writes, "Corny third entry in the Kickboxer franchise is not helped by having its star be Sasha Mitchell, who I still can't get past being the dumb brother on Step by Step. He was in the second film, and I'll admit that he's a decent martial artist, but I can't get past him being a doofus of an actor. The story follows the kickboxer formula, with the hero having to get revenge on an evil kickboxer for beating down a friend, though this film also has a good old Wallace Beery type of subplot." I think he meant Wallace Beery, the actor from the Golden Age of Hollywood, known for playing villains. "With the kickboxing hero helping Brazilian street urchins, this film is certainly not something to go out of your way to see, but it is nearly watchable if you enjoy formula boxing, kickboxing films, which I do." And Rob, isn't nearly watchable what we're all looking for when picking a movie to watch?
Yeah.
However, spot on, Alan C., with that review. I mean, right along with everything that we talked about with all of the Sasha Mitchell choices.
Yes, yeah. But I have to take issue with his comments about the kickboxing aspect of it. I just thought that was bad too.
Well, I mean, there was kickboxing in it.
Well, yeah, it was. You got to see some, but
right.
I guess if that's your bar, then yeah, okay, it passes that.
I guess that's where the nearly watchable part comes into play for this film. Okay, let's go on to the next review. Rob, we've got a kickboxer historian here to help us fill in some of the gaps.
Please do.
Heather R. gives it 3 stars and lets us know, "Everything you might expect from a Kickboxer sequel is here. David Sloan, exotic location, and trainer Zian are all here. I want to remind everyone of the warehouse shootout to rescue Eric Sloan in the original that helps the mansion shootout in this sequel to not feel completely out of place in a movie called Kickboxer. What is thoroughly missing is in Art of War is Tong Po and any memorable music. Not that music here is bad, it actually fits the setting quite well, but like I said, ultimately forgettable. The fight choreography is about on par with the second movie in the series, though filmed better, and the slow motion effects are handled much better here." Okay, so thank you, Heather R., because it has been a long time since I've seen the first Kickboxer, and I don't remember the warehouse shootout, and that did feel really out of place.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was an intentional callback by the screenwriters, maybe.
Somehow I doubt it.
That's putting a lot into it. And we already discussed the music. I have to disagree with Heather R. here with the music, because there was music in the film.
Yeah,
but
it was there.
Yeah. Okay, finally, Rob, the Rotten Tomatoes user Private U has an issue with everybody, giving this film a half star and writes, "Probably where the Wachowskis learned the art of making guns, fighting, and killing boring."
Wow.
Yeah.
Even taking a shot at the Wachowskis.
Yeah, that is some serious shade thrown there. So, okay. Rob, let's put a bow on this thing. I have an idea where you're going to fall on this scale, but let's make it episode official. I have to ask, is Kickboxer 3 Art of War worth staying up all night for?
Well, I'll sum it up by saying this. I hated it, and I'm mad I had to watch it. So,
wow.
A big fat no, don't stay up for this one. I think it is the worst movie we've watched so far.
And I'll remind you, we chose this film.
I know, and that's why I'm mad.
Right, and you did say, I think as soon as it got tossed out there, I think you did say something to the effect of, it's really bad, right?
Well, I had to, and that was solely based on
what you'd heard, because you hadn't even seen it, and you knew
what
that.
I'd heard, and knowing that 2 was, markedly worse than 1. But my memory, if memory serves correctly, I enjoyed, at the time, enjoyed 2 to a, some degree. I feel like there was significantly more kickboxing in that movie than we got here. But, memory doesn't always serve us. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that deserves a rewatch.
Oh boy, you are a self-masochist, aren't you? Okay, so I have to preface this by saying that I loved this type of movie growing up, as we talked about. As a latchkey kid in the apartment complex of the southwest suburbs of Chicago, my friends and I would just absolutely consume all of the martial arts films that we could get our hands on. We would just run straight to the action section at the video store and grab any box with a ninja or a dragon on it, and we were set for the rest of the day. So a couple of things at play here. One, which we've talked about a couple times on this podcast, is how our perception of movies changes with age. And obviously, a lot of those movies weren't high quality, so there's that. But I can still sit down and watch a lot of them today and be entertained.
Oh, 100%.
This movie, however, isn't made in the same vein of those 80s martial arts movies that I love so much. And we talked about this a little earlier, but this is a bad action movie with an occasional martial arts move in it.
Yeah.
And granted, it was made in 1992, so the ninja genre had gone out of fashion by this point, morphing into more of an MMA style that would explode in popularity by the end of the decade. So out with karate, in with MMA, and what we had in the middle makes for just terrible cinema. Trying to figure out what are we doing here? Are we doing long gun shootouts? Are we doing martial arts? It is also for me a strong not worth staying up all night for. It had all the bad cinematic tropes you can imagine for a film like this: the white savior, the mystical Asian, who, despite being in almost every scene with David, was only referenced by name once. It's just not good. And Rob, we were looking for something a bit lighter this week, but we went too far in the opposite direction.
Way too far.
Yeah. And as referenced earlier, Kickboxer 4 is the only other film from the franchise to appear on Up All Night. So I doubt we'll be revisiting this illustrious franchise in the near future. Are you okay with that, Rob?
I think so. Especially considering he is in it. Sasha is in it again. That I've had my fill after this one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't go back to that well.
Okay, mercifully, that is it for Kickboxer 3. And until next time, we'll just leave you with these this words of wisdom to be careful if you go to a kickboxing charity event. Just beware of what type of creepy characters might be lurking in the audience.
And if you're desperate for boxing action, go watch anything that Tony Jaa is in. Fairly recent stuff in the 2000s. He's made 3 movies called Ong Bak. The story is kind of crazy in all 3 of them, but man, the action is some of the best you'll see. And I think they're all on Tubi, or some of them are on Tubi, possibly.
Good advice, and unfortunately, don't turn to any film with Kickboxer in the title, even though you think that's exactly where you should turn. So, buyer beware for sure. As always, you can find us on Facebook and Twitter at StillUpPodcast. And we will be back with another episode, and we're bound to top this, no matter what we choose.
Movie,
All right. Enjoy the sounds from the fight sequence of the big battle between Martine and David Sloan. We'll see you next time.